Hello, happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone, and welcome to this visual novel called Canvas Colors in the Moving City. This is a visual novel that's a slice of life, I think, about going on an adventure or something. So I'm excited to read this story to you as you guys all drink and be merry. Let's go ahead and start. Shanews has many names. It was the marching state. It was the town of Shanews has many names. It was the marching state. It was the town of Transience. Most simply called it the moving city. And it was here where a woman named Maggie made her work. Work? I don't want to think about work. Maggie was a postman and thus had many different responsibilities. Oh man. I don't want to get away at the beautiful. I'll chill right here, guys. I don't want to take away her, beautiful spotlight. Maggie was a postman and thus had many different responsibilities. Presently, it was to deliver a dwindling bundle of letters in a bag which she carried. A trivial task, were this not to be done in the moving city. After all, it would be a poor nickname if the buildings did not all walk and wheel and limp and scamper about all on their own. As such, there was no fixed city plan, there was no main walkway or artery, and there were no streets, or permanent ones, anyway. So one had to turn their eyes up, which is what Maggie did, and this was how one navigates the city. Above the homes and the shops flutter each a set of flags to indicate what is where and who lives there. But anyway, Maggie stood in the square. The stones beneath her foot remained in place, in spite of the rumbling beneath her and beside her and all about her visible radius. Buildings shifted and lumbered forward and to the left and to the right, and some lagged behind and changed positions so as to not crash into one another. From where she stood, she had a decent enough view of the place. There she remained, not wholly out of fatigue, but because she was looking for the flags to which she must deliver her remaining few letters. She squinted at the heights for a glimpse of her targets, keeping the contents of her satchel firmly in her mind. 2. Home with red flag with lion upon it, moving city. 2. Shop green checkered flag, pig sign over door, shad news or moving city. 2. House blue red flag, black dir moving site. 2. Home mauve flag over a green flag, moving city. She blew a bit of air out of her nose. While one of her job functions was to deliver these letters, certainly she wasn't expected to know the name of every color of the rainbow. So Maggie happened on a passer-by and asked, "Pardon me, sir." The man froze. It was not the sight of the postman that stopped him, but her race. Plainly, Maggie was not human. Her pointed ears, tall stature, and featured head painted Maggie as one of the vain, so she smiled at the man and maintained her distance. "I'm having a small difficulty with some deliveries. Would you mind telling me what color mauve is?" "A mauve?" The man took a half step backward as if he were making to run off somewhere. But when he saw that the vein give no reaction, he appeared to give that up. Either she would catch up to him, or she posed no threat. "It's kinda pink-purple, or light purple maybe, you're looking for." He stopped himself. He was old, so it was entirely possible he was a war veteran, and the scars of those who lived history would always be fresher than those who did not. So the sight of a Venus postman before him was equally ridiculous as it was terrifying. Yet he continued, Oh, I never really liked her anyway. Thinks real highly of herself. Does she now? She's got a green flag too, so look for that. It's a plain green flag. Then you'll see that mauve flag, or whatever she calls that nonsense. I have places to be, so I'm leaving. Bye. Bye, man. She thanked him for his time, and looked again at the roofs of the buildings. Soon enough her target appeared to her between a four-legged tower and a squat, wheeled home, with many windows. The occupants were already lowering bridges between the buildings. This was the other tricky part of being a postman in a moving city. A bridge could be many things. Therefore, when Maggie saw her path must cross two loosely forged wielding metal mosaics, she steeled herself and got on. They completely changed the tone of the music. She stilled herself and got on with the business of advanced level walking. Each step produced a different creak, an almost musical effect that may have delighted her were the earth not rushing by 12 feet below. She fought the impulse to look down, though in crossing only halfway, she saw the only thing keeping the bridge moored to the other end were a couple of sacks of flour. No, she thought, this is not a bridge, this is an ordeal. When the square behind her shook and in turn rattled the bridge, she voted immediately to sprint the remaining 10 feet. Her boots rattled the bridge with each pounding step, shaking the flour bags bit by bit by bit by bit. She arrived. Maggie took only a few moments to steady her nerve and allowed a moment for her knees to cease their quivering. As she calmed herself, she thought to exact a fine on the owner of this plot of land, the builder of this bridge, for endangering the lives of any who thought to cross. She even thought to kick the bridge over the side for the betterment of everyone. Of both thoughts she entertained neither, and instead reset the sacks of flour to stabilize the path some, and she continued on quickly. The woman found her target soon enough, and with little further trouble. There was a green flag. There was the pink-purple flag above it, and that was all the verification she required after risking her life. Typically, she would ask the recipient for some sort of identification, as it was her job as postman to confirm people who are who they say they are. It was her job as well to check up on them and investigate ill goings-on and apprehend criminals and their dealings at her discretion. But this time she merely wanted to be done with her deliveries so she could pound back a tall mug of ale and relax, just like the Irish. I did play the right game, because it's St. Patrick's Day, and maybe we'll see her doing this later. So she dropped the delivery in the little letter box by the door, and that was the end of it. Now remained 3 letters. She found a shop with the green checkered flag first, and turned out to be a pub where we drink the liquor. Yes, for St. Patrick's Day. And she made a mental note to visit them later, bidding them luck that the letter was not a bill. She found the house with the blue-red flag and the black door next, and the recipient was a rather crotchety old woman who threatened violence upon the man who wrote the letter. She requested Maggie stick around a moment while she wrote her reply that she did not, in fact, owe the man any money, and that it was a bet made over 30 years ago, so it was past time to let that go. The old woman made sure to spit in the envelope before handing it to Maggie. Her letter rivaled the previous as an exercise atrocity of penmanship, made things worse by the haste in which she had written the thing and the gob of spittle that had begun to leak through. Maggie reminded her to attach the proper postage, and she headed off with directions, all the while keeping watch for the final home. The postman dropped off the damp envelope without ceremony, or without so much as a knock on the door. Best not get caught up in this mess, she thought. But then there was a final letter. It had been hours, and its owner was nowhere in sight. She checked the address again. Red flag with a lion upon it. Nothing of the sort appeared to her. Oh, back to this beat. I like this beat. I like to do this one. Maggie found a high plaza, surrounded by a dense cluster of buildings, most of which moved by a mechanical leg. She watched for a moment. For a moment, it was a small wonder. None of them stepped on one another, or tripped over another's legs. Rather, it was more like an intricate dance than a group of homes and businesses marching aimlessly through the desert. From her vantage point, she had a better view of the city. Certainly there were red flags, but most appeared plain, and of the remainder none appeared to be the one she sought. Was it possible the house had fallen behind? They all seemed tethered to one another, moving together as a school of herrings. Perhaps, she giggled to herself, a larger house had eaten it. "Excuse me, miss." Maggie caught the attention of a woman passing by. "I am looking for a home with a red flag that has a lion on it. Afraid I don't know the one." "Sorry," said the woman with the flower on her head. She marched her on her way, so Maggie found another person. "Sir, could you help me find someone?" "I'm in a hurry, postman. Will this take long?" "I am looking for a house with a red flag that should have a lion on it. Can't help you. Good day." And this continued for a greater part of an hour. It seemed none knew or cared to let slip where the house might be. Maggie even considered covering her feathers and hiding her ears, as if that were the source of the problem, though it was more likely the people around her simply did not know. This was a city after all. Who could keep track? Who memorizes the numbers of the buildings on a lane? So she switched tactics and put on her theft-taker's demeanor. She put her hand to her sword and stopped the first person she saw. "Sir, I need to speak with you for a moment regarding a case. A postman's job was not just to deliver parcels and correspondence. A postman's job was not just... They were guards and hunters of criminals and could even be called on as militia." Jeez. Wow, that's pretty cool. Doubt we could call that on a job description here. As such, each postman carried a sword at their waist. She drew her weapon on the man for a bit of intimidation. Better to play the part of a mildly unhinged lawbringer. The man's eyes widened and he stopped everything he was doing. "A home has gone missing lately, and I suspect something odd afoot. Do you know anything of the sort?" A home? Missing? Nah, not that I can recall. I mean, there was that one house a couple days ago that broke down." "A house broke down?" Yeah, it was just a small one, you know. And so other people, they tried helping her out. Must have been a bad furnace or something. So the people offered to help, and she just didn't say anything. Looked like she lost a big bet. Eventually, she told everyone to back off, and that was the end of it. That's all I know. Did this house have a red flag? What? I don't know, maybe. I don't remember that well. She slackened her stance and nodded to let him leave. If this was indeed the place she was looking for, she would need to hire a carriage to backtrack the city's path. While the city plodded along, it was not so slow that her task would not take hours longer. This was proving far more difficult than it needed to be. Maggie resolved to transfer out of the city once the last delivery was done. But she would again be taking Vale further from her home. She was distracted for a moment, thinking of the young girl that traveled with her. Vale had followed Maggie around for at least a month now, and she was beginning to wonder if the girl was at a homesick, or even thought to write her family. But that was a question for when she was around. And so Maggie found another poor pedestrian to interrogate and set about looking for her charge. She found Vale in a crowded plaza, entrancing a small group with magic and parlor tricks. She found Vale in a crowded plaza, entrancing a small group with magic and parlor tricks. She would briefly conjure up a glowing pale light about her fingers, and then, once the interest of the crowd was locked, placed her hands together and pretended to separate her thumb from her hand. One of the group gasped while the remainder clapped, dropping small coins in a wicker basket nearby. Once they were gone, Vale huffed, but upon seeing Maggie approach, she brightened right up. "How'd it go?" They looked impressed. Would have impressed even my family. I did the glowy thing, and with my hand, and pretended to remove my thumb, and before that, I pretended to float. Did you see how impressed with my magic they were? And they dropped a whole bunch of coins into the basket, too. I think it's like that thing where you throw flowers at a play. It's a version of that, yeah. So I guess you could say I'm getting better with this magic stuff, don't you think? I think so. Maybe a traveling magician will take you on as an apprentice. Vale puffed up at the bit in pride, turning her head to hide the blush. He shall have to wait. I'm on a mission. Anyway, all done? Not quite. We have to hire a carriage for the last one. Apparently houses can break down, and for some reason the lady who lives in the house did not wish for help, so we have now a several hours ride ahead of us. Vale flicked a few coins out of her basket like they were ants on a pastry. She then took the basket and followed Maggie. The pair crossed several bridges to a ferry service which Maggie had located earlier. They found the shop owner, and at once Maggie flashed her postman's badge. He bade them follow downstairs to a low balcony, where he saw a trio of carriages, each hooked up to a craggy stone golem. The golems stood idle like large statues, staring into the receding horizon with no apparent sentience. The shop owner scribbled something on a piece of paper, unhinged the skull cap of one of the golems, slipped the note inside, and closed it up. Soon the golem shivered to life, and Maggie and Vale boarded the cab, and they set off. As they sat, Vale took out a small field guide and flipped quickly to a specific page, showing it to Maggie. Did you remember to ask anyone if they'd seen this flower? No. She turned her book of horticulture to face the postman, pointing to a long stem flower with little bell-shaped blooms which hung as if they were wilting. There was next to it a cutaway diagram of the flower and a picture of its leaves, about which were scrawled notes in some human dialect Maggie could not read. "It's no one's heard of it, that I could tell." Mom said they're found to the east, but she has only got a faint reckoning of exactly where. Mayhaps we're not far enough." "Mayhaps, Vale." "Could be. And that reminds me, Vale, have you written to your family yet?" Vale was silent and turned to her book. "You know, it's no good going so far and so long without even a word you're all right. They'll be worried about you." Vale buried her face in the book now, and Maggie elected to drop the matter. It had been several weeks since she had contacted her own family. Perhaps it was hypocrisy of her to press Vale into it. "I've been on lots of journeys. Mom knows I'm okay, and Dad isn't at all worried. I've been away from home lots of times. The girl set her book down, though she continued to stare at its pages. I just don't think I'm good. I don't think I'm yet good enough at writing letters. Does that make any sense? A little. Maggie smiled and turned to look at the landscape rolling slowly by. Already the clatter and thump of the city began to fade. Can I hold your sword? Maggie started awake. Was I asleep? Startled awake? I think so. So, I'm sorry. Can I hold your sword? Do all postmen carry these? All postmen do carry these, yes. But we cannot permit anyone other than a postman to carry them. It's an insult to the uniform, for one. I could get in trouble for another, and you could get hurt yourself. I'll be careful. Sorry, Val. No. I'll bet you use it all the time. I have several times, yes, mostly to encourage people to make wise decisions. Stars seemingly appear in the young girl's eyes. Have you ever fought? She toned her voice down low, as if the next word might conjure up something evil. Monsters? Once? Vale dropped her book to the floor. Whoa! It was difficult. It was a difficult day. I struggle well to forget, and I think best not repeat it outside some very thick walls. And after many drinks, she muttered to herself, I wouldn't be afraid of monsters if I was you. You'd scare them away before they got us in sword distance. Maggie looked out the window, hoping Val would find something else to ask about. I'm sure they meant before. Maggie looked out the window, hoping Vale would find something else to ask about, and Vale then startled herself with a realization. I just remembered I got these earlier. She produced some little hand pies and handed two to Maggie. One's sweet and one's not. I'm eating the sweet one first. It's got the seeds on top. Maggie started the opposite way and found it was filled with jam and of bacon and onion, with a bit of potato here and there. Her stomach was quite out of room before she was half finished with that pie. Do all the English become postmen? I have not seen many, though there may be a complicated reason behind it. Vale left it at that and tucked into her second pie. How old do you all really get? I'm not certain. No one really told me. Do you know how old humans get? Nope, but I hear the vein got older. Perhaps I'll find out. So how much further are we to this last house? Can't say. I just know to follow the trail back until we hit it. It broke down 2 days ago, so I've gathered it, and by judging how fast the city moves, we'll approach it in a couple of hours. Do the houses break down a lot? Some do. Usually the community seems to come together to get them up and running, but this person didn't want help for some reason. Maybe they thought they could fix it themselves. I broke my dad's favorite shovel once. He said he could fix it, but I told him I would do it since I broke it, and it's my responsibility to make it right. That's what he taught me. Vale beamed in pride, remembering the heated lesson. Did he fix it? I broke it more, so I got him a new one. But it's fine, since he likes the new one better. Maybe we should help this person fix their house. So we break it and get a new house? Well, no. I think because the houses are run by magic, that I can fix them by magic, right? If I try to fix a non-magic thing by magic, then it explodes. I don't think a magical house will explode. Let's hope not. They had thus passed in silence. Vale had fallen asleep some minutes ago, and Maggie was finished with her second pie, which she guessed was filled with dates and was as rich as the first had been. She decided it was a poor idea to let Vale choose lunch. Even still, in spite of her overall full stomach and sore backside from hours of sitting, Maggie was content. The red rocks and wiry vegetation that crept by were calming, and so was the knowledge that she would soon be finished with her job. And so Maggie hummed a tune to herself, and before long, Vale stretched and groaned. "What's that? What's this song? It's a marching tune. Did you learn that in the army?" Maggie let out a small laugh. "You overguess at how old I am, Vale. And besides, one of my commanding officers taught it to me." "Do you know the words?" "I do, but I'm afraid it would make for poor listening." Vale grumped at the Venlish woman and said, "You're far too serious, Maggie." Maggie felt a little hurt, so she turned back to the window and sighed. And she sang slowly this. Oh, let me turn it up. Oh, I have to sing it. From Barker's cry heard in the square, to any able lad who dare, for noble cause and hardy pay, over the hills and far away. Over the hills and round the fanes, from comely shore to farther bay, our King commands and we obey, over the hills and far away. From home to fire, through smoke and spell, companions all around me fell, for kin and king and country way, over the hills and far away. And as she sang the chorus once more, Vale pulled out the little notebook and scribbled the words as quick as she could. For 90 days and maybe more, we met the foe at every ford. No bitter end we see today, over the hills and far away. Vale was riding in a mad fury, and seemed to catch by the time Maggie had finished the course again. Of many battles we have seen, to find our sovereign's head a-cleaved. Our lords are fled, our king is slain, over the hills and far away. Oh, the hills and gone away, through sodden field and salted plain. Now Queen commands and we obey, over the hills and far away. I don't know what she did at the end there. She blushed. I'm blushing. think I did okay with it, you guys. I love my low singing voice. Here Maggie's voice cracked and she held back the next lines. Indeed, she turned back to the window in embarrassment, ceasing to sing or even speak further. You were right, Maggie. That was a bit sad. Was that how the war with the Vane went? Is that why all the older folks are so cross with you? Roughly. Then people are fools. You weren't there, were you? And it isn't like it was your fault all the battles and stuff didn't go the way they should have. Maggie kept quiet, searching for words. Perhaps it doesn't matter. Anyway, we've arrived. The carriage halted, and Maggie groaned out of her seat, stretching her back once she set boot upon the dusty earth. Even waned on the lone house partly listed into the red dirt. About it was planted many small succulents and desert plants in the early stages of cultivation. And up top, a red flag fluttered in the cooling air. There was a lion on it. We found it, guys. We're just going to turn back around, aren't we? Yes, but I think I'll check up on this person. We at least deserve to know the face of one whom we traveled far to see. Wouldn't you agree? Vale nodded and followed along, only to become distracted by a flowering cactus. She took out her notebook and started to sketch the flower, as Maggie knocked at the door. There was a soft voice from inside which answered, and when the woman inside finally opened the door to face her, Maggie's heart iced over. Maggie! Vale looked up from her distraction to see a human woman embracing Maggie. The Vane woman was too shocked to respond at first, but when she had back her senses, she returned the hug. Vale approached the pair, and they separated. The human woman looked up at Maggie, committing her face to memory. Maggie? Oh, Vale, this is my sister, Amarella. Amarella nodded at the young girl. And this is Vale. She travels with me. You are not a Vane. The woman paid no heed to Vale's comment. I was only to have a light dinner tonight, but I'm open for a change, and I have a little keg of some Venlish ale I've long sought an excuse to tap. Come, you two. Maggie hesitated, holding one of her arms, and shifted her weight between each leg. That won't do, Maggie. I insist. Fine, but first, Maggie whipped out her final letters of the day, all addressed to Amarella, who took them with a courtesy. Will the postman be asking how my days has gone? Amarella. Fine, fine. These will be my delivery changes. I expect nothing interesting to open, I'm sure. She seized Maggie's wrist and dragged her inside. Vale followed as if she were a shadow. Bee. There's a bee in your house. There's a bee right there. There's a horn or an antler or something. They entered the home. The floor was leveled in spite of the slight angles of the house from outside. There was a large hearth at the far end of the main room, where the makings of an evening's fire lay just unlit. There was a small table by the hearth, and only a single intricate chair sat there. The table itself was covered in plant clippings and several half-full earthen pots, which Amarella quickly swept away, leaving the tabletop bare. She left Maggie and Vale there and hustled into the kitchen, calling out to them. Do make yourselves comfortable. I'll be but a moment. And indeed, she was out quite soon, with a couple of boards of some sausages and a wheel of cheese. She then set them upon the table, while Vale found herself a tall box to sit upon, scooting it up to the table. Maggie, light the fire, please. Maggie? Oh my gosh, Oh, I can make a save. Yes. Lit the fire. Maggie grabbed the flint and steel from the top of the hearth, and knelt down to begin her assigned tasks. She, of course, had the fire going. In little time, Amarilla nodded in appreciation. So Amarilla sliced the sausages, humming to herself a tuneless song. I presume to be your last stop of the day, I take it? You are. What a wonderful coincidence this is. I had no idea you had left home. Mother and father did not reveal this to me. It is a recent change, and one which has proved most satisfactory, I must say. I've forgotten the beer. One moment. So we will be merry at the end of the day in St. Patrick's Day with these folk I have just met today. Amarilla wiped her hands on her dress and pattered off in another room. She seems happy. In spite of her situation, yes. I think she missed you. Yes, well, I did too. I think I'll write to my family tonight. It was then that Amarilla arrived with a small keg humming while she set it sideways upon an upturned grate. She hurried back to the kitchen and soon returned with a spigot and a wooden mallet. She set the spigot against a disc of cork which stuck out from the face of the keg, and taking the mallet she struck the spigot to drive it into the keg. It took several whacks, and the little beer split onto the floor. But that was an unavoidable casualty. Might father disapprove your experience with such a task? Was he who taught me, Maggie, but that was after you went off on your postman's training. Oh, but I jest. Some men in Schwans taught me the craft. I attended a bar for some weeks until my little exile. From some place, Amarilla produced a trio of mugs. Two she filled near to the brim, but for the third she addressed Vale. And for the young lady, fine Venlish ale. Amarilla paused a moment and looked to Maggie. Just a bit to taste. Indeed. So Amarilla dripped a bit of the keg into the final mug and handed it off to Vale. She took the mug with both hands, in reverence and awe of a ruby-red liquid within. Da was always on about the legendary Venlish ale. And she took a sip, and she took a gulp, and she screwed up her face and set down the mug in disappointment, which had Maggie and Amarilla laughing. They clapped together their mugs and took a long drink each, and each set down their mug with a satisfied sigh. I needed that. Venlish beer's disgusting. It is a taste developed with age, both for the beer and the one who drinks it. Hear, hear! She raised her mug, and Amarilla obliged, and the sisters finished their drinks, though Maggie was only just the soonest. You refill those, then, and I shall get something more palatable for the young lady. Amarilla wandered back into the kitchen, returned with a jug of some red juice, and poured a bit for Vale, top it off with a little bit of ale. For luck. In this form, Vale found the drink much more agreeable. It was a little sweet and tasted much less of the yeasty, fizzy brew she had earlier. And then Amarilla took a seat at the table, continuing to slice the summer sausages she had brought in, though Maggie went in quickly for a bit of cheese. How's the life of a postman? Have you delivered some particularly important correspondence as of late? I do not read the letters, Amarilla. but there have been some of a less private mind, though the people with loose tongues tend to give the least important or interesting information, if their superiors are wise. Then the wisdom runs wide as far as I have heard. Anyway, mail is not all I do. Well, oh, this is all I've ever seen you at. Granted, it's not the... Maggie leaned into her drink, searching for words, until Vale broke in with a whisper. Do you know she fought bandits once? The news snapped up all of Amarilla's attention, and her face darkened. She set her knife upon the table and put her full attention to Maggie, seeking her eyes. Maggie kept in her mug. Did she now? How does the tale go? 4 men accosted us on the road to Schwann's, and I dispatched them. Maggie, don't be so boring. Amarilla searched for Maggie's eyes, but her gaze was avoided. There was 4 of them, big and ugly, mean-looking, and they wanted the contents of Maggie's satchel, right? So Maggie said, you may not have this. It is official postman business, or something like that. And of them, he was their leader. I think because he was the biggest of them all, he said. Wrong answer, girlie. I don't care if you are a bloody vein or not. There are 4 of us. So Maggie said back, Humph, only 4. And she put her hand on her sword like this, and one of the guys, he lost his nerve and then took off. She didn't even have time to draw it or anything. But the remaining 3 just laugh at him and yell some bad stuff after him. And they were all more profit for us. And that's when Maggie told me to run, and she drew out her sword. So Vale hopped out of her seat and displayed her best approximation of Maggie's stance. Amarilla had her hands on her own cheeks. But I hid nearby, though I wasn't at all worried. So they all charged, and she kicked the nearest one in the shins, and hit another one with the pommel. Oh, what did I miss? And hit them up with the handle? The handle? The pommel. Right, pommel. And the last fellow, he dropped his club and ran away too. So Maggie approached the leader, and she put his sword to his throat like this. Vale grabbed a stick from a nearby surface and pointed it downward at what could have been a defeated villain lying belly up at her mercy. She had her most determined glare pointed at him. And she said, I ought to put a pair of you to death and save everybody the trouble. And they were all like, sorry, we'll never do it again. We was just gonna to knock yours out and take your shite. No's harm in ye's beyond that, miss. No, sorry, I mean, my lord. And you know what she did? She knocked them out with a pommel, and we were out on our way. Most impressive. Father was correct to place you among their lot, I see. Maggie fell into her mug, hiding the expression with a swig of beer. Vale beamed, and the room was silent after that, if not for the crackling fire. Vale shrunk back a little, and though she knew she had done nothing wrong, it felt as if she had. The sisters were silent for a long time, and eventually Amarilla slid her mug across the table, knocking it against Maggie's, and tossing it back. Maggie took a deep breath and did the same. Then let us speak of lighter things than highwaymen and endangering children. Tell me, Vale, how did you come to join my sister's wanderings? I was looking for a flower. Oh! Vale fumbled about in her bag for her little book and flipped to a page she had folded over and thrust it atop the table for Amarilla to see. This is the one Maggie said she'd help me find it. Have you seen it anywhere? I'm afraid I have not. My cultivations are all things of scrubland currently, like that red juice is from a cactus not too far from here. I took the fruits of it. So. Cactuses make fruits? They make all sorts of things, though I must say, stings in the hands are the most common. Vale eyed the bandage on her wrist. And some of the big ones. When she said cactus juice, it reminded me of Sokka's, like, crazy cactus stuff going on in the desert. And I forgot the exact quote. Oh no. And some of the big ones have water inside of them. Though you shouldn't drink it, as it doesn't agree with the stomach. I know this from personal experience, so you can take this advice as a paramount. Of course, if you properly prepared for a trip, you shouldn't need to forage for water out here, but given no other option, you should seek out a plant with red fruits on it. You know a lot about the scrub. I've been industrious with my time out here. Maggie finally perked up some and brought a question. Speaking of, how did you come by this plot of land? I heard from the townsfolk that a house had broken down. Indeed. And that the owner refused everyone's aid? Yes, well, would you like some cheese, Vale? I'm very fond of this variety, and I think you should like it too. Maggie raised a brow. Perhaps this was something her sister preferred not to talk about, or perhaps this was a problem of her own doing. Regardless, she should let the question fall away while Amarella doted on Vale. Perhaps more beer would reveal what she secreted away, Maggie thought, and she topped off the mugs. The night had fallen on the land. The insides of the hall were filled with laughter and bold resolutions, as one of the 10 makes after several drinks. Vale sat on her crate by the table as the sisters stumbled through a cheerful drinking song, led along by Maggie, who had an easier time remembering how it went. And the song ended, and Amarella fell laughing into her chair. Ah, I've not heard that one in quite some time, and the bars here make terrible songs. Always the same 3 ones, over and over again, as if they'd no imagination. Something ought to teach them something new. Well, yes, indeed, teach them something new. They should, simply, ask a postman, I suppose. Even the postmen are so boring. You live in such a vibrant place, but it's as if their minds are full up on how they might get to work 5 minutes from now, and they have no creativity except for how to walk. Walk? You know, to where they're going. The buildings are all moving, Maggie. Amarella tried in vain to pour some more beer, but the pair had drained it quite thoroughly. I fear our keg has run dry. My fairest Venlish red, my cherished most fondest friend. Though empty mugs have brought me sorrow, I shall regret you on the morrow. Amarella snorted and giggled wildly, and Vale was becoming a little irritated with her sister. It was as if everything said was funny, though nothing really was, and Maggie was occupied completely with her own drink, seeming to shut everything else out. Vale could not even goad her to direct the conversation into something more interesting. Beer made fools of everyone, at least the mood was light. Maggie, when you get back to that blasted town, you should find the nearest pub you can and sing them a song, because they could all use it. Whichever should I pick? Something in Venlish, give them a real shock. I need only stroll into a pub for that. Yes, well, Amarilla threw her hand up as if that was to get her point across. Vale, no. Oh, I can save here too. Asked how Vane and Human came to be sisters. It was then Vale decided she was having no more of these drunken ramblings, and she asked a question that had tugged at her for a while now. Why Why aren't you a Vane? I am, can't you tell, girl? Amarilla grabbed a pair of loose leaves and stuck them above her ears, then tried desperately and unsuccessfully to hold in her laughter. This had Maggie chuckle a bit. To clarify, Vale, I am Vane only by birth. I was adopted into Amarilla's home. I'm sorry? It was so long ago not to worry. Father found her while he was out hunting about our lands. She was remarkably thin. You could see the bones on her, which I thought rather unsettling at the time. I was wandering for a time. Anyway, our father found this dreadfully malnourished Vane girl one day and brought her home, and Mother was initially hesitant, you know. You find a foreign child, you want to find the mother first and foremost, especially so for one with the feathered folk. So we clothed her and bathed her, and none claimed her, so we kept her. You speak of me as a stray dog. You'll not complain to me, sister. I fed you soup in those days. So, yes, come, gratitude is warranted. Now be silent, lest I reveal all the embarrassing details of your upbringing, which I shall proceed to do so anyway. Maggie flicked a crumb of cheese at her sister, which bounced off her cheek without so much as a flinch. So, given our resident Vane was to be one of the family, I took it upon myself to treat her as a proper lady of the house. Firstly, a lady does not speak, lest wisdom or counsel allow it. She took quite well to this lesson, though gives neither wisdom nor counsel when asked. Not wholly a success, but I was 8 or 9, expecting perfection of a child. Pish. So, your nobility, why do you live in this house? It seemed as if, for the briefest of seconds, Amarilla winced. Well, one such as I, who stands out even without being the girl with the Venlish sister, should get away. And one should depart their home and journey once in a while to keep their mind from getting too stuffy, wouldn't you say? I've been on lots of journeys, yes. Vale added with a ton of pride. Truly, then, I must be less well-traveled than you, young miss, as I have been from the home only thrice, this being the 3rd time, though it has been the shortest. Should have did that earlier. I've been out. Vale went over the memories in her head. There was the time that her father had taken the family to see a group of mummers perform a mile outside the village, which was itself miles from her home. Her father had to borrow a horse to carry them to that. And there was the time her mother and father accompanied her to the woods in search of flowers she had spotted in her book. And as well, there was a mill several miles from home she had to sneak out to get to, and her parents had yet to find out about that. Well, it is plain from your pause, you have me beat. It is odd indeed for a child to have traveled more so than I. I must change this. But who's going to look after your plants? Well, I mean, not that I would travel any time soon. And apart from that, they were around me before. They were around before me, and they'll be around when I'm gone. This is the way of things. We humans are very much transient in this world. Vale did not understand the last part so much, so she looked to Maggie. But I'll bet Maggie has us both beat. Maggie finally looked up from her mug, disrupted of her thought. Huh? You've been lots of places, right? Indeed. An obvious defeat to us both. Is that a complaint? Only that you cease to elaborate fully on your quest. What more is there to say when all the lands bleed into one another? Nothing perhaps stands out among them all at all. Some things do. Amarilla huffed, and it was plain to her the conversation had reached its end. Amarilla, You say you're simply on a vacation, but I feel like you're being entirely truthful. Not. Nonsense. One does not begin a garden in a temporary place, and furthermore your home breaks down and you refuse help to get it running again? It isn't like you to leave a thing broken and simply adapt to it. Is something the matter? Unease crossed her sister's face. Maggie need only press her further, but did she really feel it necessary? Would this not create some sort of strain between them? I'm just very curious myself, so I might press it anyway. Maggie pressed her sister. Yeah, her chest was hot and she pressed her questions anyway. Sister, please tell me what's the matter. Are you sick? In trouble? Nothing of the sort. Nothing at all. It's... Amarella waved her hand as if to shoo away the question, but she slumped back into her seat, thoughtful and as quiet as she had ever been, and at length she spoke. Have you ever known to be a person known for another's fame? Is your identity tied to that of your family? Can one truly be their own person? I don't understand. I know this because you know me as Amarella, your sister, and mother and father know me as Amarella, their daughter. Yet to everyone else, I am the woman with the Venlish sister. At home, I have ceased to be me so much as me and you, if you follow, and it is the fact that vexes me. This fact. You, of all, understand that I should source my frustration in the ignorance of others. When they lie before me each day, I could go to the market, walk among our gardens, and the servants and common folk all think one the same. When my identity relies upon the existence of another person, I fear I may lose my sense of self, or perhaps it was never particularly strong to begin with. Maggie said nothing, but the quizzical frown on her face spurred Amarella to continue. I wish for solitude as it means of separation and definition. Are you throwing away your family? No, dear sister, nothing so extreme. I seek exile for a time, to become me, for the thankful silence missing at home. The country here is so very quiet and peaceful, a difficult land to be sure, but I find it agreeable. I feel it allows me moments of reflection I sorely need with mother and father. Maggie, normally scarce for words, was now wholly deprived of them, and Vale could barely follow the conversation, and therefore said nothing. Amarella smiled softly. It is late, and the drink has begun to wear away. The pair of you may rest here the night. And don't refuse my offer, Maggie, I insist. The way back will be long and longer still in the morning. You'll find better rest under this roof than in that wobbly carriage. She pointed at the chest by the door and continued. There you may find blankets, and I have a spare bedroll for the young miss. I trust you have your own? I have one, yes. I will return. Amarilla withdrew to another room, and came back with a roll of down for Vale to sleep on. They set themselves up before a fireplace, which had begun to die down a little. Maggie tossed on another log for them to sleep before. Maggie did not sleep as much as run over unceasing thoughts of the revelations of the evening. And by the time she had thought them over with the fire and had fallen to embers, and the cold of the night was then what kept her awake. And so she rose from her bundle to claim another blanket from the chest by the door. Crossing the room, she peered into her sister's bed. She found her facing a window, curled up about a pillow she had when they were children, and now the darkness behind Vale whispered, Maggie. Maggie winced and turned and crept back to the bundle, kneeling beside the girl. I thought you were asleep. I heard you get up. I wanted to know if you could get me one more blanket. Yes, I can. And so Maggie once more got up and went to the chest, grabbing 2 blankets. Yet briefly she saw a movement in the bedroom and stopped. She saw Amarilla stir from her bed and sit up, staring out of the moons. but she continued past. Are you sure she's alright? No. Why don't you talk to her? It is plain that she is under some stress, and she wishes to handle it in her own way. You don't seem so sure. I'm not. Then you should talk to her. Maggie thought for a moment. The embers snapped and she spoke. Perhaps what I say will not matter. She has done this much on her own, and she is strong. She'll get through this. And I'm not sure how to proceed besides. Vale stared the vain woman down, seeking some expression that might reveal some ounce of what went on in her head, but nothing was apparent. You know her best, I think. Maggie nodded and tossed one of the blankets over Vale. Soon Vale drifted into slumber. Maggie slept fitfully. Orange light shone directly upon Maggie's closed eyes and pried them open. Slowly she sat up, and seeing Vale asleep beside her, she got up with as much stealth as one could muster. But Maggie did not seek to wake her or her sister. She found instead some papers from her bag, and took also a pen and ink bottle, and set herself up on the kitchen table for a quick bit of writing. Just before she had finished, Amarilla yawning, stumbling into the main hall, and her footsteps had Vale up before long. Maggie jotted her last thought and folded the paper, and then stood up. We have been too long here, I think. You're leaving before breakfast? I must insist we start soon, lest her trip back will take several more hours. They could hear Vale huff in annoyance. Fair point. You might make it before midday, though I doubt your stomachs will appreciate the lack of some provisions before you leave. I will fetch you something. Vale groaned out from beneath the blankets. She blinked in the morning sun and smoothed her own hair, which had been flattened on one side, not unlike an anvil in appearance. Amarilla set before them 2 bags of food and filled their canteens with more of the pink juice they had tasted the previous night. She saw them off to their carriage and embraced each in turn. But one thing for the pair of you. For the young lady, a flower of the cactus whose fruit you enjoyed. It is very much not the flower in your book, but I think it's pretty enough for pressing. She handed to Vale a flower whose petals were deep red in the middle, which faded into a delicate pink. Vale smiled and gave her a bow. Thanks, it's really pretty. I thought so, and for you. She handed Maggie a letter. I expect you'll see this to Mother and Father. I like them to visit when they like, as well as you too, of course. But I think you will bring the beer the next time, as payment for your debt accrued. Debt? Drinking all my red Venlish stuff is hard to come by. Venlish stuff is hard to come by, you know. Especially is so in this country. Fair. Until next time, my doll. Vale saw Maggie wince, but she regained herself and wrote directions on a little note, which she placed into the golem's head. It stirred to life, and Maggie only had just enough time to hop into the cab before it was off. They waved. Amarilla waved back, and she receded into the landscape. Vale immediately set into the food bag, finding it filled with some rolls and jam to which neither she could place the flavor. They were pleasant enough, and when she had finished she noticed Maggie had not touched her food. She simply stared out the window again. Why did you wince when she called you doll? It's nothing. Is that your nickname? Maggie remained silent and let the line of question come to an end, though Vale thought to tease her about it later. For now the two were quiet again. The hours passed on and on. It was past midday before they caught up to the moving city, and the golem had them back at the stable. They trudged on through the bedlam and crowds, neither saying much for weariness of the road. And so they came upon the Postman's Guild, and Maggie relayed her news and requested transfer out of the town, citing her difficulties in traversing the place and the hostilities of the locals. Therefore, Maggie had her new orders, and she took Vale into another carriage, pulled by another golem, destined for another town and lands unknown to either of them. The journey continues. Now, there's a couple of options. There's a couple of options we need to explore. Turn to Vale. Maggie locked eyes with Vale, who took their meaning into interject, and interjected, "I'll do it." And the girl raised her arms, closed her eyes, and held the attention of the room while she concentrated. Soon enough, a small series of sparks popped beneath the piles of logs, which then fizzled into a small flame, which soon erupted into a full fire. Amarilla clapped. "My sincerest compliments to the young magician." Vale stuck out her chest and turned her head to hide her blushing. So Amarilla sliced the sausages, humming to herself a tuneless song. After that, and took her book and went outside. It was then that Vale decided she was having no more of these drunken ramblings, and she slipped outside. Ooh. The night sky was as it had been back home, and there was a feeling of longing within her. She looked at the glittering stars, felt the cold desert breeze, and heaved a sigh. She set about inspecting Amarilla's garden. The moons were bright enough that she could read her own handwriting. Vale passed the pages, each of its own memorial, and she found the song Maggie had sung and smiled. And she took a new page and her charcoal and began sketching up the plant she saw. It was some time later when Maggie found her. Cold? Oh, she has stars around her today. "A little. Is your sister still up?" She was getting quite annoying. I don't want to talk to her anymore. Not for long. I've set a couple of bedrolls by the fire when you're ready. She missed you dearly. She needed that drink, yes, as did I. Maggie turned, yet hesitated to lead the young girl. It was fun. Why is she out in the desert? I didn't seize a chance to ask. I'll try again in the morning. She led the girl back inside, where Amarilla sat quietly before the fire. She turned to greet Val. "Most discourteous of me to become so taken with drink tonight, as I would fail to entertain my guests. My apologies, Val." "It's alright, your plants are pretty." "Thank you. I have work to do yet, but I am proud of my efforts thus far." Amarilla smiled softly. "It is late, and the drink had begun to wear away. The pair of you may rest here." Oh no. I got the same ending, it looks like. Maggie allowed the matter to drop away. The fear won out, or perhaps what happened to Amarilla? She's turned into a ghost. Guys, I think she drank too much. I think the beer killed her. Oh my gosh. Guys, send your regards. The fear won out, or perhaps it was wisdom. Maggie allowed the matter to drop, and her sister cheered right up. Right, shall I fetch some wine? My cellar, rudimentary though it may be, may still house all the drink we should ever need. Perhaps we've all had enough. 'Tis so! I would prefer to nibble a bit at our dinner for a while. Perhaps young Vale should elaborate more upon these perilous adventures of yours. It was now Maggie's turn to show her unease. Vale, at least this time, read the atmosphere and elected to change the subject. Maggie said the furnaces of these homes break down. Is that what happened to yours? Indeed, such misfortune betook the furnace, and here I remain. But I have come to like it here. It is peaceful, far away from the city. It was kind of difficult to get around. Amarilla lit up and sparked the fear in Vale that she had opened a whole line of conversation. Amarilla lit up and sparked the fear in Vale that she had opened a whole line of conversation that may stretch on hours. like when her father spoke of beer, or when her mother spoke of the prices at the market. It certainly was, however. Could men live in such a way? The inconsistent, the chaos. To wake up and have the streets be different from when you knew them the prior night. Utter madness, and for them to change about you, and even when you traverse the bridges. And she continued for a time, such as the moons reached the zenith and Vale's backside had begun to tire. Amarilla did not allow for responses beyond the occasional nod, and she spoke at length until finally she saw Vale lose a long yawn. But anyway, I have prattled and complained for quite some time, I see. Amarilla smiled softly. It is late, and the drink had begun to wear away. The pair of you may rest here the night, and don't refuse my offer, Maggie. I insist. And you should talk to her. Alright, is she gonna finally talk to her? Maggie looked to the doorway. She held her gaze there, and then she got up. Yes, I got the other ending, guys. The Venlish woman knocked at the doorway, and Amarilla turned with a start. Trouble sleeping? Yes. Too much to drink, as I have. Too much think, actually. Well, you were always one more of thought and action than words. Maggie sat beside her sister and stared out the moon, searching for a way to begin what she wanted to say, the way she had done since first she lay down in front of the fire. Do you regret me as a sister? Why would you say that? What you've said tonight about your identity being tied to me, was that some sign of regret? It was in a way, but never because of you. Maggie, if I could grow up with you once more, twice more, thrice, and 1,000 times more, I would do so happily. It is not your burden to bear, the misgivings of your elder sister. Misgivings are my job. Yet you have regrets. Regrets that I am in the minds of others an elder sister more than I am my own person, if you understand. And your solution is exile? Amarilla paused and drew a deep breath. I have always cherished my own company, Maggie. Understand, though I love you, and I love mother and father, it is others I wish separations from. I find the company of most folk bothersome at worst, exhausting at best. A feeling that seems to have compounded since living in the city, though I had originally come here to disappear into the mass. But here alone under the stars in the silence, I am nothing. I am not Amarilla of the house of Tewksford. I am not Amarilla the barkeep. I am a rock of the land. I am a shrub upon the earth. I disappear in the truest sense of the word. Men, they all cling together and form society. They collect into great and stinking cities, and gossip and grope about, and tell tales and falsehoods to escape their moralities. Distractions to forget they are merely motes of dust before the march of time. This folly and these distractions are tiresome. I feel I must behave as a doll tied to strings. Out here, though, there is no civilization to hide my fear of insignificance. One simply becomes the landscape, and you already do not matter. It is honest. There are no reassurances or platitudes. There is life, and there is not. I find comfort in this. Perhaps unusual as it may be, the solitude does me good. I have never slept better, save this night, and I found again my love for gardening. At least to refresh my humanity, I will remain here, and I say again, this is no fault of yours or mother and father. Slowly, Maggie nodded. I suppose I understand some of what you say. In all my wanderings, I have often felt a calm when I am alone. But I always had a companion in training, and after completing it, I suppose I yearn for such again. It is well to have someone to share words with, and to keep your back covered in the sinister lands. And I suppose in that way, I had not realized you could be different. Amarilla stretched and fell back into her mattress. A shock to growing up, isn't it? To find those you grew up among are not of a like mind after all. Maggie fell back the same way. Indeed. In silence they lay there, staring at the ceiling. For the first time this night, Maggie had a clear head and thought she could fall asleep like this, but Amarilla ended the silence. And so you came upon young Vale on her mission to locate the mysterious flower. She is to be your companion on the road. Until she finds her flower, yes. And it is not for the desire of children that you carry her along. Maggie elbowed her sister in the rib, which elicited a pained grunt and a little giggle afterwards. But for how long will she travel with you? Can't say. Then, if ever the day comes, do see her home, will you? I may. Then I dare say drowsiness will soon take me off as well. The bed is not large enough for two, and certainly not a full-grown vain woman. Maggie heaved herself up and re-entered the main room, where Vale snoozed by the dying embers. She lifted up one of the blankets she had grabbed earlier and gingerly placed it over the sleeping girl. Maggie, too, was asleep soon enough. Wow, now a restless sleep this time, huh? Seems like a lot of things were covered up with that little talk we had. Orange light shone directly onto Maggie's closed eyes and pried them open. Slowly she sat up, seeing Vale asleep beside her. Alright, let's see if anything changes. But after some time... Alright, let's look at the history. Doll, is that your nickname? The two were quiet again. But after some time, Vale spoke up. Maggie, could I have some paper? I want to write a letter. Of course. Maggie pulled a sheaf of papers from her bag, and Vale took them. Once again, neither spoke, and all the sound could be heard was the scratching of the charcoal on paper, and the clunk of the wheels, and the groaning of the carriage walls. When Vale completed her letter, she took the flower Amarilla had given her and pressed it carefully against the clean paper, folding it softly and within her letter, which she then handed to Maggie. Maggie then showed her the proper way to address it, and handed her some sealing wax, and stamped it once complete. Vale beheld her complete letter in reverence, before handing it off to the postman. Well done! My first letter! First of many. And then they left to continue on to their adventure. Yeah. Alright, I really enjoyed this story. It's about family, finding your identity, drinking beer. It's great. I loved it. And travel. Travel's fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this story like I did. Thank you so much for watching. And I will see you guys in the next video. And goodbye. Thank you. Bye.